everybody. Welcome to Latched Mama Podcast. Melissa here. It is almost spring in Virginia. It's actually cold again, though, today, which is very sad. It tricked us. It got warm, and it felt like spring for a little while. But it was good. It got warm enough that everything turned green, but now it's like 37 degrees again. So, yeah. We're making do, though. Lindy is here today, and we are going to talk about birth stories. We're going to go back and forth a little bit, talk about our takeaways from our 11 combined births. It's a lot of babies. Yeah. But yeah, so we're going to talk a little bit about it, what we've learned over the years of birth and babies. Hope you guys enjoy it. You're listening to the Latched Mama Podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Wirt, business owner and tired mom of 5. Join us each week as we talk about pregnancy, nursing, parenting, and all things motherhood. Hi, friend. Hi. How are you?
Hi, good.
We haven't done this in a few weeks.
I know. It's been a while.
It's been a long time. But it's good. I feel like spring is coming.
Yes.
Which, when you have a big family and the weather changes and everybody can be outside, it is like... It's like an upgrade as a mother. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
It's incredible. Lindy's headed to Florida later today. She's going to go spend a week in a condo. I would like to call it vacation, but I know better than that because it's never vacation when you travel with your children. It's just parenting from another place.
Yep.
So we've kind of compiled some podcast ideas that you guys have given us, and we are going to just kind of go through them over the next few weeks and months. And the first one we're going to talk about is how our babies came into the world, which is exciting and fun and wonderful to talk about. And I always love hearing people's birth stories. But because we have so many, we're going to have to go kind of quickly through them. So we're really going to hit on kind of what we learned from each of their births. Some takeaways, maybe things that we wanted to change on the other side of them because it's not always perfect. Things don't always go the way you planned, but I like to think that they go the way that they're sometimes supposed to go in terms of teaching you and growing you as a mother. But yeah, do you want to start since you have the oldest child?
Sure. So Lennox is my oldest. He's 13 this year. How
old were you when you got pregnant with
him? I think I had him at 25, so maybe 24.
Okay, that's young.
25? Yeah, I had no clue what I was doing. I look back and I really just don't. I mean, you could read all the things.
Childbirth? Did you take a class or anything?
I don't think I took a childbirth class. I did some on breastfeeding because I really wanted to breastfeed. Still came out really not knowing anything. All right.
So you basically just signed up with an OB and said, I'm going to have this baby and I hope to breastfeed it, and didn't give a whole lot of thought of how it was going to come out of your body.
No, I had no idea.
Anybody listening right now who is doing kind of the same thing Lindy is, that's just like, hey, I'm going to have a baby and the nursery's great and then I have this awesome coming home outfit and it's fantastic. Time out. Stop. Go research how you want to have your baby. Put thought into it. Talk to people. Read books because it is so important.
Yeah.
Don't close your eyes and show up at a hospital and say, oh, I want to have my baby, and then come home with your baby. Because it matters. It absolutely matters. And we can ignore it all day long. And we can say, it's fine. Healthy mom, healthy baby. Healthy baby, healthy mom. I don't even know the saying. But it matters, guys. So
yeah, and I didn't know options. I didn't really know where to look or what was there. And so anyways, I went to have my baby and...
Hold on. Did you go into labor yourself?
Nope. I was told he was pretty big, so it gets you all worried, right?
Yep, absolutely.
I'm sure we've all heard that before. And I had him. I had no idea, kind of Hold
on. Did you go in? Were you induced?
Yeah.
At how many weeks?
40 and a bit.
Okay. And for those of you who don't know, most first-time moms do go over 40 weeks.
Yeah. All my kids were late. Well, no, except for the last ones, but that's different. So yeah, I went in and I mean, it really wasn't, I was scared as a new mom.
Mm-hmm. Did you even know what Pitocin was?
No. And the one thing that I would change, we talk about maybe one thing I would come back from that, but really you don't know this until you've gone through and learned and had experience, right? So I went in there and the nurse was like, of course I'm like, I'm just nervous, like all of it.
Yeah.
She's like, yeah, so you're in here because of high blood pressure. And I'm like, nope, never had high blood pressure. And she's like, it's on the form. I'm like, nope. And she's like, well, your doctor wrote it down. So right then and there, I should have walked out of that hospital.
Yeah.
But I didn't know. I didn't have the education. I didn't know. But the induction thankfully went fine. I did have an epidural. I truly had no idea. And I think like most women, if you're not educated and you don't know kind of what that feels like, especially contractions on Pitocin. I was also coming from a very, very athletic background. Yep. So the way for me, and you kind of learn through births, but every time that contraction hit, my whole body just gripped it. So I was literally like just not letting my body kind of progress.
Absolutely.
So as soon as I did get that epidural, I was able to let my stomach muscles relax and actually do the work. Everything was fine.
Did you push for a while?
No, I didn't. I think I pushed for like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And I think that's coming from an athletic background.
Yeah.
I've never had the issues pushing. But I also do wonder, looking back, he came out very cone head. And in the end, he actually had like a little seizure that really he's perfectly fine. But we spent a week in the children's hospital. And I wondered if I was actually pushing earlier than I needed to. With the strength that I had, that could have possibly created that, because none of my other kids had that issue. So it's just, I look back and it was very uneducated. I didn't know where to look. I think you need to trust yourself. Don't ever get admitted because there's some sort of lie on a thing. So,
that makes
and I have
me
to
so
say
mad.
that, but I have to say like that is an OB issue. And also me, my other ones, I have an amazing OB. So it's not just to kind of obstetricians. I think there's good and there's bad care providers everywhere, but you really do need to trust yourself, But in that moment, I mean, this is hindsight, right?
Yeah.
After experience.
I just can't
So it was hard. It's hard to look back on that one, especially your first one. So
yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I was thinking today about, I knew we were going to talk about this, and I was thinking about what my life was like 9 years ago, because my firstborn will be 9 in 2 weeks, and how much I knew about birth. And luckily I had leaned into a little bit of it. My mother-in-law, so my husband's mom, was very, very into how her children came into the world. And she had her last one at home and her last one in Richmond. So Eric was always very kind of adamant about the fact that we really concentrated on learning and how our babies came into the world. And I don't know, I was thinking about the fact that when I was pregnant with Nathan, I was working in like corporate America. And nobody had home births. Nobody was hippie. Everybody wore pantsuits and heels. And, I don't know how exactly I ended up where I ended up in terms of not going the typical OB route. But, I'm thankful I did, because I think that first birth led to the second, which led to the start of Latched Mama, which led to the, eventual of the rest of them. But it is interesting to look back at what you knew the first time versus as you have more kids and as you educate yourself. And it almost takes going through the process once and then looking back on it and remembering like how much little things play into it.
But just that made me think, like, if you had said midwife, I don't even know if I would have known what that was.
Absolutely.
At 25.
Yeah.
And I really didn't know anybody who either had a home birth or was at a midwife center. Do you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So it didn't even pop into my mind as to far as like, what are my choices?
Yeah. And midwifery care in a lot of ways is very different than what you're going to see in a typical OB care. I mean, there's OBs that practice very similarly to midwives. And I'm sure that there are hospital-based midwives who practice more like OBs. But, the midwifery model of care really, really takes care of kind of the whole woman throughout the whole birthing person throughout the pregnancy, which for me, especially now with as much as I have on my plate, is really important to me, because it's not necessarily the physical stuff that I struggle with during pregnancy. It's the fact that your entire body changes. Your mind changes. your ability to just have stamina and life changes. Everything gets affected. And as you have more children, the idea of bringing more people into this world is hard. And it's great to be able to have a type of care that really recognizes the fact that your life is changing and you're growing. So I didn't really understand that 9 years ago, but I did know that coming from also an athletic background, that I wanted to challenge myself and I wanted to challenge my body and I wanted to try and have a baby without as many interventions as possible. Like most women, I had seen the business of being born, and I believed in that cascade of interventions. I believe that in many cases, birth and hospitals do treat, sometimes childbirth as a machine that has to, continue. I mean, hospitals have to make money, and, you're not going to have a woman in most cases sit in labor for, 3 days. You're going to need that hospital bed. You're going to need to move them forward. So, I believe in the fact that, once you enter the hospital for various reasons, there are timelines, and I wanted to try and stay out of that as much as possible. So luckily for me, we had the first birth center in Richmond had opened as I got pregnant with my first. I did a model of prenatal care called centering pregnancy, which is cool. And I know there's various places in Richmond that you can still do it. And I know that model of care is throughout the country too. It was basically group prenatal classes, which was really cool. It allowed us to kind of talk about other topics. It allowed people to be together in a group. It's just kind of like group therapy in the sense that more questions are going to be asked and you're going to make friendships and stuff like that. So if that is an option somewhere locally for you guys, especially first-time moms, it was very, very helpful for me. But yeah, I got told all the same stuff that you get told, your first pregnancy, that you're going to most likely go over 40 weeks, that you're going to push for 3 hours, or 2 hours. I don't know what the statistic is. I don't mean to be dramatic. It's not 3 hours, but I think it's a significant amount of time. That labor is going to be long. It's going to be hard. It's going to test you in ways that things happen in your life. And then on a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful April day at 8 a.m., I kind of lost my mucus plug, I think. Didn't really give much thought to it. Went to work, came home around 11, went and got a manicure, went to Target, ate the best club sandwich I've ever eaten in my life. Still had zero idea that I was in labor. I thought maybe something was going on, but I was like, whatever. I went on a 5-mile walk with my husband and the dog. I probably should have realized at that point that I just wanted to keep walking. No desire to go home, no desire to stop. Wasn't really timing contractions. I mean, it's so funny to look back on it because I'm like, hey, I was totally in labor, totally, but I had no idea. Hadn't called the midwife, hadn't reached out to anyone. The sun set and we curled up on the couch, and Eric and I did, and we watched this silly show that we watched on it was ABC Family. It was called Make It or Break It. It was this, have you watched it? It's this gymnastic show about these kids who try to get to the Olympics. And then we made dinner. We made chicken fingers and mac and cheese. And I remember I looked at the food in front of on my plate, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't eat this. I'm nauseous. So I called my midwife and I was like, hey, so this is going on. I think it's been going on for a little while. She said, okay, no big deal. I'm going to lay out my clothes just in case you call me in the middle of the night, but go take a bath and go to bed. And, if I hear from you, I'll be on my way. And I was like, okay, this is great. It's so funny to think about this now as I get 4 other babies naturally at home. But I had no idea what was going on. So I went up and I took a bath, which was, in hindsight, probably the single worst thing I could have done. Because what that did is that relaxed my body enough to finish the labor process. My water broke as I got out of the bathtub. The baby, I literally, if I had just sat down and pushed, would have had the baby on the bathroom floor. And then that just started this entire hour of absolute chaos. I'm screaming. Eric's thinking about the birth classes that we took and the fact that we were going to push for 2 hours and that he thought that this was just the start of active labor. And I'm like, I don't think you understand, the baby is coming out of my body. And if anybody has ever felt that fetal ejection reflex when you're like, literally, please keep this baby inside of me. I am not safe. This baby is not safe. Like because I had, as much as I was going to a midwife and as much as I had the special type of care, I still was terrified of childbirth. I'd never seen it before. You know, you have what you think of in the movies, you know, the baby's going to come out not breathing. What's going to happen then? The safest place for this baby is to stay inside my body. So I got in the back of the car. We absolutely should have just had him at the house, but I didn't know better. Got him in the back of the car. I got on all fours. Eric flew as fast as he could to the birth center, which was like 15 minutes away. As we were pulling off the highway, I couldn't take it anymore. The baby popped out, and I had put underwear on and a pad because my water's broken. So it just comes out and gushes. And so Nathan's head was between the pad and my body. I was pretty convinced that he was not alive, because I figured he was suffocating. I think his head, now what I know about childbirth, I think his head had probably come out. He probably wasn't all the way out, but he was out enough that like desire to get him out of my body was gone at that point. We pulled into the birth center. Midwife came out, ripped off my underwear, took him, put him on my chest, and we sat in the back of the car for a little while. So yeah, it was crazy. And he came out screaming, and he screamed for the first year and a half of his life. He still screams at 9 years old. He's kind of my highly emotional one. I think he entered the world the way he was supposed to enter the world, to match his personality. But yeah, I don't know. I think my takeaway from that is like, I needed like that 100% wake up call that my life was not, now that I was a mom, was literally not going to be able to be planned. Like I had planned every second of my life going up to that minute. I knew when I wanted to get married. I knew when I wanted to have babies. Like I knew like that I thought I was in control of everything. And then then Nathan came out on the side of the highway, and I was like, oh, so this is what motherhood is. Oh, great. This is going to be awesome. Let me buckle my seatbelt and let's get going. But yeah, I mean, 3 hours later, we were back at home picking up the aftermath of whatever we left. And, you know, the rest was history. Yeah. So it's crazy. It's nuts. It's nuts that like life can just be crazy sometimes. But so then you went from Lennox to Gabe.
Went from Lennox to Gabe.
How much time between the two?
They're 21 months apart. So pretty close.
I mean, my boys are 20. So yeah.
Yeah, pretty close. And honestly, I didn't do a whole lot different because I don't know. But I was a little bit more confident in what I wanted. But I think I did get an epidural, and it worked like 60%.
Okay.
You know,
were you induced
even
this time
that
too?
They broke my water.
Okay.
I did have a little bit of pit, but it wasn't a whole lot. But it was probably like it was like a 3-hour process.
Awesome.
In the hospital. Had him, and so it wasn't a whole lot different. Nothing was traumatic with that. But each kid I look back and like a little bit changed, and I would learn a little bit more about this. And so like really nothing fancy. I mean, like nothing in the back of the car. I mean, mine are fairly boring at the beginning, you know? Yeah. But it was good, and I was happy with it. And, you know.
Were you induced again, or did you go into labor?
For Gabe?
Yeah.
No, I was like 4 centimeters, 5, and then I agreed to go in. So it was a Friday. All my kids are born on Fridays.
Every single one of them?
Every single one of them.
Are you kidding me? That's so cool.
No. Yeah. 3 of them I chose, and then 3 did not, but they ended up on Fridays.
That's fantastic.
So, yeah. So really that was Gabe. It wasn't anything, but I did learn a little bit more.
So you felt a little bit more in control.
I definitely felt more in control. You know, learned a little bit more about kind of how that epidural works with me, how it affected me. Thankfully, I didn't have any epidural side effects from the times that I did have them. So thankful for that. Yeah, but that wasn't anything. It wasn't anything like crazy, you know?
So I think I learned between Nathan and Alex that I probably wanted to be at home for the next one.
Were you?
So I found my way to the midwife that had helped Eric's mom have her last baby, which ironically enough was in the same house that we lived in because Eric bought the house from his mother. So it was a little different, a little creepy, but it was actually one of her first births in Richmond that she did. So it was kind of cool. It was a really, really different experience, and it took me a long time to get used to it. Definitely more kind of a holistic midwife situation. But it was good. Alex's birth was 100% what I needed. So Nathan was born like dark of the night, couldn't see anything in the car. Like only thing that was lighting the car was the parking lot lights when the midwife put him on my chest. My water broke with Alex on a Tuesday morning at like 6 a.m. And I remember being so terrified that I was going to stand up and it was going to be the same thing. Like I was going to stand up and I was going to need to have him and I wasn't safe and my midwife wasn't there. So she was amazing. I called her and she said, don't move. Don't get out of bed. And she's been practicing for so long. She absolutely knew that I was not in active labor. I'm sure she knew that I was going to stand up and the baby was not going to fall out, but I needed her there, which was incredible. So she came over, she checked me, told me to get up, told me to get moving. She was like the perfect, I want to call like knitting midwife in the sense that she wasn't knitting, she was reading, but she just sat in our bonus room and she was there. And Eric and I did basically exactly the same thing we did with Nathan's birth. We walked, we talked, we hung out, we were alone. It was fantastic. And like around 11:30, I walked upstairs and I walked up to my midwife and I was like, something's changed. And she's like, yeah, you're going to have a baby. Like, like things are changing. And so I got in the tub, and I had chosen already to have it in the bonus room, which is interesting because somebody asked me the other day, like, why out of all the rooms in the house, like, why not your bedroom? Why not someplace else? And I still to this day don't know, other than the fact that it all came together so beautifully because it's like the only room in my house that there's skylights. So in every way that Nathan's birth was dark and scary and like, it terrified me. Alex's was like just bright and beautiful with sun shining through the skylights in the middle of the afternoon. I think he was born at like 1:30. It was absolutely perfect. It was exactly what I needed. It was exactly what Eric and I needed to kind of heal from it, and heal from just kind of the terror of having a baby on the side of the road. But it's interesting though, because just like you said, like little things change and you can't go, I think sometimes from this super traumatic birth experience or this super scary thing or, not being in control and think that your next one, you're going to get everything you want in it. For me, I had a baby step into it. I didn't necessarily create the relationship that I had wanted to with my midwife or that was possible, I think at that point. But what I got was safety. And what I got was light and beautiful. And like, it was it was fantastic. But it was like baby stepping into that next thing that I needed, and kind of growing as a person and a mother. Yeah. So, yeah. So then you went to Nora.
Yeah. So one of the things with Gabe that you can kind of start realizing with an OB is that if you see one in a larger practice, they may not deliver. So I didn't like who delivered Gabe. I didn't really like her personality. I just didn't like it. That was one thing. So with the third one, I started to kind of develop a relationship like with this OB that I really loved that delivered my other kids as well. And somehow we accidentally knew what I was having, but I only knew my first. I knew my first and I knew my last ones, which were twins. So I didn't know the genders kind of in between. So he kept this a secret, but he knew I had two boys. So he knew I was having a girl. I didn't know. So like, I swear he did everything he could to possibly be at that birth. Because he wanted to see that. And so once again, it was a similar, but once again, I still went, I'm weird and I'm very different from you in the fact that like, I like the comfort of a hospital. I'm this huge introvert.
It's fantastic.
I cannot imagine having a baby at home and being bombarded like I would like
bombarded.
It's
like
so weird.
Hold on, bombarded
by kids, by people that need me. Like I'm just
weird. You can kind of control it,
and I'm sure I can. Like hindsight, I totally could. But so, anyways, I went in there and similar. I was like 4 centimeters, 5. They broke my water. Had a baby in, I think it was like under 2 hours. I think I got up, and this is where like your mental growth.
Did you get an epidural?
I did, but this is where your mental growth creeps a little bit like each time, right?
Yeah.
Like I can do this. So I think I got to about 7 or 8 centimeters, and I was starting to panic. Like it was really painful. It was really hard. I was still on a bit of Pitocin, right? So by the time I had to wait a bit for the epidural, but by the time I got one, I mean, this thing worked like maybe 20%. Like I felt the entire, it felt that whole baby move down. I'm like, after I had her, I'm like, dude, like if it's just a little bit more than that, like I could totally do that. But it's like that little bit of mental like growth each time, because it's almost, to me, it's way more mental than anything else.
100%.
So that was like a bit of the growth with that. And I also love my OB, and he did deliver that one, and just the care was very different. But I'd also grown, from that.
And it's so crazy because like, if I would, now I guess I'll talk about my third, but the growth, and it's very similar because we had 2 boys very, very close together, back to back.
Yeah.
The growth between my 2 boys, and then I had a girl, was incredible. And it was interesting because I don't think you always realize it, maybe, while you're going through it. Like I'm not the type that ever looks at a birth and says, or looks at a pregnancy and says, this is what I want to accomplish, or this is how I want to go. Maybe at this point, maybe if we have another one, I would be that way. But, going into Caroline's pregnancy, I had started Latched Mama, which was huge. So I had this like external kind of purpose going on. And at the other side of Alex's birth, I was really, really intrigued by this community kind of that my midwife had started. And just the birth community in Richmond is supportive, and it's different. And I was really, really surprised on the other side of Alex's birth that even though I had like a princess birth, like I call it, like I had there was 0 that went wrong. It was perfect. My mom was there on the back side of it. I got to lay in as long as I wanted to. I had all of the help in the world. Somebody was cooking for me. Like it was great. It was still really hard. And I remember just being met with this, holy cow, we don't take care of our mothers enough. Like if I had all of this privilege and I had all of this support, I had an amazing midwife that would have been there if I had called her about anything. I had a great mom who was in town taking care of me. If this was hard for me, I cannot even imagine what it is like for the women who don't have anybody on the other side, who have to go back to their hourly jobs, who only touch base with their care provider at 6 weeks. So I was super inspired to find a way, to kind of help others and to really, support moms as they navigate through this process. So Latched Mama was born. So I think when I showed up pregnant with Caroline, like 2 years later, I'd had a loss in between. Didn't really have a great relationship with my midwife. I remember I navigated that loss by myself. But when I showed back up, I knew that in so many ways she could help me grow. And I knew that if I had leaned into the process, which was kind of typical midwifery process, she practices out of her house, but it's like an hour of, 20 minutes about the baby and the pregnancy, and the rest of it is about you and growth and, figuring out where you are in life and stuff like that. But Latched Mama had started, and I definitely needed, not necessarily support on how to build an e-commerce company, but, a reminder of why supporting moms and kind of loving them through the process was important. So I really think I leaned into that pregnancy. And Caroline, my water broke in the evening on a Saturday, which was perfect. And, the boys, I got the boys to bed, which was so cool. And one of those beautiful things about home birth is like, as much as you're like, I don't want my kids like bombarding me, it's beautiful because it's seamless. Like it can be seamless. And Nancy came over around 10 and it was just easy and wonderful. And she sat next to the tub and Eric sat on a stool in the corner. And then he kind of came over to the tub maybe a little bit. I don't know. I don't really like to be touched, but I felt every single contraction and it was amazing. And I felt her move down and she was born. The kids slept right through it. They woke up the next morning to their new sister. It was beautiful. It was magical. And for the first time, probably in all of my births, I definitely felt supported and I felt safe. And it was really cool. So very similar to what you said in the sense that like at some point in the process, you realize that most likely you're going to have a baby and you're going to have a healthy baby and it's going to be okay. But like, hey, can I let a little bit of support in? Like, can I feel supported through this process? Can I feel a little bit less alone?
Yeah.
Which is probably something you and I both struggle with a little bit in life in general.
There's always this air of things that you can't control with birth and pregnancy. But I think as you go through each one of them, you feel a little bit more in control of those things you can control and kind of an awareness and understanding that, I may not be able to control that, but this is kind of my desires. This is what I would like. And you kind of like let go a little bit. And, I always had kind of like, you hear like, oh, you write your birth plan, you do all this. And even from the beginning, even with the 1 or 2, I was definitely more of like a go with the flow. Like I kind of knew what I wanted, but like I wasn't going to get stuck into one thing or another. But like as you go on, like those are kind of the things I, would kind of start to understand. And
I was always kind of at the point where in this, I think with birth plans and stuff in general, like once you kind of accept the fact that there's stuff you can't control, in my opinion, I never really wanted to get my hopes up and have them broken. Right. Like I wanted to be prepared for everything. And I think that there's something very magical and something very special when you can connect with a care provider in such a way that it doesn't matter what happens. And that's the whole thing. Is like, it doesn't matter if you end up with a C-section. If you have the right care provider, they're going to do everything in their power to make sure that it's still a positive birth experience for you. And I think that that's, my constant takeaway. I think I probably talk about that more on this podcast than anything else. And I think getting to the point where women feel like they deserve that is big. It's just getting to the point where it's okay to go search for that. And it's okay to leave the OBGYN that gave you your first PAP to find somebody who fits you as who you are as a birthing person. Right. Right. So then you went on to Nellie.
Yes. So, and I have to look back, like all these pregnancies, I was so overwhelmed. I think at that point I had 3. Nora was born September. So Lennox was like 3 and 3 months.
Yeah. Wow.
Now Nellie, between Nora and Nellie is a big gap. That's my biggest gap, which is 2.5 years. I know.
Such a huge gap.
Like massive
so
gap.
Big.
Huge. But it was, and we'd always talked about 4 kids. And so I'm like, this is my last. I'm like, with the little steps that I learned and all that, I knew at that point, and I'm like, I don't need that epidural. It didn't work for me, number one. So I'm going to like try this and I'm going to see because it's my last kid. And I look back and I'm like, kind of like, I probably should be treating, hindsight. Like I should have had this kind of feeling with all of them, but I feel like this feeling is where I've got to
absolutely
because of all these different experiences.
100%.
So that was my thing. I was like, I'm just going to go out like whatever happens, I loved my OB. Pretty much by that point, he was like, I will be at your births regardless. That's awesome. I had his phone number. He's like, just text me. I'll be there.
Did you tell him that you wanted to try and do it naturally?
Yeah.
And
by then after the third epidural, he's like, that didn't really work, did it? And I'm like, nope. He's like, you can do this. He's like, whatever you want, I mean, that's just him. Whatever you wanted is what he wanted to get for you, which was great. So then there was Nellie, and all my other ones I had around 40 weeks because I went in. So Nellie, I went over 40 weeks. And I think it was like 40 and 5.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. But my water never broke. But contractions started like consistently. I don't know. It was like 11:30 or something at night. And so I labored overnight. And
did you labor at home overnight?
Pretty amazing, like the mental growth. Yeah. Yeah. No, I was awake the whole night. So, but I finally went in. I think it was like 5:30. Started getting to where they were like really like just difficult to work through, right? Like you can tell the ones that are making progress and ones that are just,
what made you want to labor at home more than the other ones? Was it because you went in at the other one? You went, but you just decided you wanted to do it on your own.
It's
and
my last kid. Like,
you were confident.
Let's just like see. I had the confidence by then.
Absolutely.
But I had to learn that. Like it didn't come naturally for me. And, by then I'd had multiple kids. I'd educated myself more. I found more resources. I knew what I wanted. I was more confident. I knew how this worked because I'd had 3 already.
Absolutely.
Like
it's a little less scary too.
It is. It's a little less scary to say, I'm fine alone at home at 12 at night and no one's awake. Like I'm going to be okay because I know how this works. I know my body and that kind of thing.
That's such an amazing,
isn't it?
It's so great.
But it takes, for some people, it just takes a while.
It also takes a good care provider. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
It
Like
does.
he empowered you to know that your body was okay and that you're not broken and that you were going to know
and
what
I'd
to
still
do.
trucked myself to the hospital.
Yeah.
My little happy place. But it was different because by the time I got in, I did not know contractions not on Pitocin.
Absolutely.
I didn't.
Were they different?
So by the time those contractions, by the time I went in, I'm like, I gotta be, I don't know what I thought I was, but by the time I went in, I was like, I think I was around like a 6 or 7, I think. So then he came in, he sat down and he was just like, what do you want to do? Like my water hadn't broken. So I could have walked out of there if I wanted to, but I was just very confident and very happy with where I was. I had a ball. I love to be on the ball.
Did it feel like an athletic endeavor at that point? Like, do you ever feel like, like challenging yourself?
Oh yeah. By the time I
yourself?
got to Nelly and then the twins, it was just like, leave me alone. I always had some music on and I'm like, we're just going to like rock this out. Like, but that's always nice for me because there's an end point.
Absolutely.
So I'm like, when something's never ending, that's hard to kind of mentally wrap your brain around.
I would say I would give birth any day over the stomach flu. I say that all the time.
Well, I say that now, right?
It's so progressive. Like you actually know normally that there's an end point and that there's an end. And it's just a beautiful thing at the end of it.
Yeah. So he gave me a choice. Like, so he did just check me. He's like, you're like 6 to 7. He's like, you tell me what you want to do. He's like, what do you want to do? Like, do you want to just keep going? Do you want me to break your water? He's like, we can just break it and do nothing. He's like, do you want to put kind of just like a hep block in? Do you want anything? He's like, this is what I love about him. He's like, look, if you do want epidural, he said, you got to have one of those bags through your body. So he's like, we can't not hook you up. And you ask me later to get one. The answer is going to be no. He's like, so just you make your decision. And I already knew I didn't want it. So I'm like, I don't want it. I'm like, just put in a lock and tape it down just in case. So that's what they did. And I remember my nurse, she was going to school to be a midwife. And in the end, I was like, you know what? I'm like, break my water. I'm good to go. Because I knew.
As soon as they break your water.
Once we break our water, we're like game on. I'm like, give me the game. Like I'm ready. Like I'm ready to do this type of thing. So I broke my water and I sat on a ball and she was so sweet. Like she didn't leave the room. But to be honest, he broke my water and I had a baby like 45 minutes, an hour later. And she sat on my back. She pushed on my back. Do you remember her name? People touching me. No, but she didn't like rub me. Yeah. She literally just pushed. And it was probably one of those last 2 contractions. And then obviously I was kind of nauseous. I was like, I'm definitely like in transition. She's like, well, do you want to hop on the bed? And I was like, yeah. Cause at that point I was kind of like shaky on the ball. Hopped up on the bed and then like that was the craziest thing. Like that was just what was so cool about not like feeling everything. Like that and I was like, oh my God, like I felt this the last time, just not to this extent. Right. And then you're always kind of worried, like, you hear about this like Ring of Fire stuff and all of this. But honestly, I mean, it was like 5 seconds and like the kid was out. And by my 4th kid, then I'm literally just like, then I'm worried about telling him at the right time because I'm like, the kid's going to fly out. Like there's really no pushing. Cannon. It's literally like controlling my muscles to like slowly let them out. Like there's really not any pushing at that point. And he was in there in the heart. Well, at first he like ran. I'm like, you better go get him. Like get him like now. And he like came back and whatnot. But it was a great birth. It was good. Yeah, it was great. I don't, And like that was apparently our last one. So, and I didn't know
Ding,
that
ding,
either.
ding, 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 ding.
I didn't know that either. So then
To
I
be
had two girls.
continued. All right, hold on. We can't talk yet. Hold
I
on.
had two boys and two girls.
Two girls. So you were done.
I was like, the
This is
perfect happy little
fantastic.
family.
Yeah.
So that was a good one.
Yeah. That's cool.
But,
I like it.
know.
And you got to like hang out with her and without other little kids around and somebody.
I mean, they all come
food.
visit. They
Yeah.
absolutely all come visit. But and it's kind of nice. By the time you have like three or four kids. I mean, I saw a local IBCLC in the hospital every time, and she like remembered me like from each one.
Yeah.
And by then she'd come in and
She's
sit.
been
And
super
it was,
supportive of Latched Mama too. We
yeah,
love her.
she would just come in and sit and be like, "Hey," she's like, "What number is this now?" And like, she's really, really wonderful.
Yeah.
But like by then, people like leave you alone.
Yeah.
You know, it was great. It was really, really good.
Oh. I'm just trying to figure out what number I'm on. So we've done Caroline. B. Sweet little BB. Oh, sweet Benjamin. Yeah, I don't know what happened. I mean, things are good. I mean, all my births have been great. There was a loss between, I don't know, was there a loss between Caroline and Benjamin? No, I don't think there was. I think we got pregnant pretty quickly. All my kids are about 2 years apart. Benjamin's pregnancy was different. I think Latched Mama was getting heavy. It was getting hard. It was getting bigger. We were in these like growing pain stages. I really wanted nothing to do with support or care. I just kind of floated through the pregnancy. It makes it sound really bad, but it wasn't Caroline's pregnancy. And I think that sometimes you just have to admit that things are different. Midwife's still absolutely fantastic, you know, what I needed her to be, but it just wasn't quite the same. I think that, you know, I had 3 kids and like I said, Latched Mama was growing and there was a lot going on. With Benjamin, my water broke. I remember I didn't feel well. I came home early from work. I didn't feel well. I stood up, my water broke, and I normally had my babies somewhere in the 37 to 38 and a half week range. So it was right there in the middle of that. And I expected the same thing to happen that happened with all the rest of them. So my water broke with Caroline, my water broke with Alex, and, you know, within a couple of hours I was in active labor and we had a baby. Mm-hmm. My longest like labor at that point was like 4 or 5 hours. But that's not what happened with Benjamin. Something didn't happen. The oxytocin wasn't coming in. It wasn't happening. He didn't really want to come out. So it was a really, really long night. I think my water broke around 4 or 5. And, you know, you would expect by the time you got to your 4th baby that you knew your body and you knew the process mm-hmm. and everything was going to be the same and fine. But I think that I needed to be maybe thrown for another loop. I think I needed to kind of learn how to trust myself and my body a little bit more. I remember I thought everything was great and I thought I was progressing fine, and I got in the tub and I expected to have my baby in there. And then I remember my midwife came over and she just kind of looked at me and she's like, "You've been in the tub for 4 hours. Like, you need to get out," or 3 hours. I don't even remember what it was, but she's like, "You need to get out." And I was like, "Well, if I get out, then like, what do I get back in?" And she's like, "No, you get out and you walk and you labor and you figure out how to have this baby, but the tub's slowing you down. Like, you're not in active labor enough to be in the tub." And for me, there was a certain fear with that because I had never been in active labor other than with Nathan outside of water. And I was really scared about how that was going to feel. So for me that night, and I look back on it and there's so much, I don't know, to process, to learn from it. It was really lonely. Eric, for some reason, because I don't interact a lot with other people when I'm in labor, but it's always been fast. So it's always been something, like you said, you know, you bounce on the ball, you listen to music, you get it done. Mm-hmm. That night I couldn't get it done. And it was really hard. Eric sat in the corner and read a book, which is what he knew to do while I was in labor. He knew to be present, but to let me rock it out. And so, but I didn't have the mental capacity that night to tell him that I needed something different. I didn't have the capacity to tell my midwife I needed something different. So she was telling me what to do, told me to walk stairs, told me to lunge, told me to just keep moving, I guess. I don't know. It was a really, really weird night. It was one of those nights where like I had to dig into myself and I had to figure it out. Eventually, you know, I felt it progressing. I knew I wasn't going to get back in the tub until I was closer to actually having the baby. We did some pressure point work. I remember I hit transition and I was standing in the kitchen, and it was the first time outside of water, other than when I had Nathan in the back of the car, that I had transitioned, and I was standing up and I held on to the countertop in the kitchen. And I remember thinking, holy hell, I'm going to vomit like everywhere. And I had no idea where anybody was, because you kind of start to black out a little bit. And like there was
a bit of a beast.
Absolutely.
Like, it is
100%. And I had no idea where anybody was. I knew, I adore my midwife. I knew that she was not very far away, but I needed somebody to ground me at that point. And I don't know where anybody was. And I remember being really terrified. So I ended up somehow on the stairwell. Like, we have like a little open stairwell. And I remember she was standing in the kitchen and she was leaning up against the dishwasher. And so I could see her down the hallway. And she's like, I want you to squat for the next 2 contractions. When you have a contraction, squat. And I was like, okay. And if anybody ever knows, like at that point, and I couldn't communicate what had happened in the kitchen. So like I wasn't communicating that I was probably in transition. And I do a very, very good job at keeping myself kind of under control. Not that you have to keep yourself under control. Right. I would much rather in that situation have not been under control, because I would have gotten the help that I probably needed at that moment. But she's like, I need you to squat. And I wanted to be like, holy cow, this baby's going to come out if I squat. But I didn't say that. I listened to her, because that's what I do. I follow rules. And I had a contraction. I squatted and I was like, holy cow. So then the second one came and I looked at her and I screamed down the hallway. I was like, he's coming. And I think she just thought I was losing a little bit of control, I think. But anyways, he came into my pants. The second baby in my life was born into my pants. And so then eventually she came and took off my pants and handed me my baby. Or no. Okay. I've got to give her credit for this. He started coming out a little bit, and I guess he had done the Nathan thing where like he had probably come under that bone, and it had gotten to the point where like there wasn't that insane desire to push my baby out anymore. And she said to me, she pulled down my pants and she's like, you have 1 contraction. I think she was holding kind of him, and she's like, where do you want to have your baby? You have 1 contraction to get where you want to be. And I was like,
okay, let me skip on over to
I was like, I'm not going over to the couch. I'm not going anywhere. Like we're having this baby right here. Like, I'm not moving. Like, this baby needs to come completely out of my body. So I had him right there. She handed him to me. I waddled over. That was what Eric calls my little rabbit poop birth, because I was like, I was probably immensely constipated. We still laugh that it was like the poop that popped my water instead of like the actual baby. And that's why it took so long, because for some reason, like I had these little, like in my little waddle between like the front hall and the couch, I like dropped little rabbit turds, and Eric was like, that was, and then Eric followed behind me, and he still laughs about it. And he's like, I followed behind you and I picked up as many as I could. He's like, and they were so damn hard. He's like, Melissa, like, how long had that poop been inside of you? It's just really funny. It's really bad. It's so bad, but it's funny. You have to laugh about it. I mean, it's birth.
It's so part of birth.
It is what it is. And at the end, I just must have, I don't know. Yeah. It's still really funny. So like we actually looked up and Googled like whether like the anatomy of a person, of like whether you're like, I don't even know where your poop's made. I'm going to sound like an idiot. Like your colon or something can actually like interfere with your like amniotic sac enough that you could, I mean, it can. I mean, it's inside your uterus, but we were laughing about the fact that my little rabbit turds is actually what evicted Benjamin before he was supposed to be born.
That's funny.
But yeah, I mean, there was a lot to learn that night. I think relationships with care providers are really important. I think not losing relationships and actually working on that throughout the pregnancy year, I think is really important. And I think that your body is different every birth. Every baby is different. Every pregnancy is different. And you just have to lean into whatever you're given in terms of a birth. I mean, there's many people who've had, 3 natural, beautiful births and then end up with a breech baby and end up with a C-section. I mean, you
just don't know.
Yeah. You get what you're given.
Yeah.
So you don't know. So what happens when you think your family's done with 4 and then
your family's done with 4? And I was driving on the way home, driving home from the beach. It was like a vacation. I was like, I feel so sick. I'm like, it's just weird. Like, I'm not sick. And he just looked at me and I was like, nope, not taking one. And it was like 3 days later. And I was like, I mean, it was like textbook, like pregnancy nausea and all that. And I'm like, so I took one, and there was like hardly any control line. Like my test line was like magenta brick red. Like, I mean, it was
How
just,
late
like,
were you?
so dark. This was like, no, I here's the thing with me. This maybe this is why I have so many kids. Like, I have a super irregular cycle. I don't know what it was
Super
from.
irregular?
Irregular. Sorry. Irregular. I mean, it could range from 32 days to 67, 68, which is a couple of mine. So I have no idea. So we were like, oh, are you late? I'm like, I have no idea. Like, I don't know. My guess was I was fairly early, which, you know, and it was. I would think I was like right around like 4 weeks or something. So yeah, so I went in. But that time I was like, you know, maybe I'm going to go switch. Maybe I'll go see a midwife.
Wow. You were going to leave your guy.
So I went to go and see a midwife. And she's like, yeah, she's like, you're measuring a little bit bigger. She's like, but it's like your fifth kid. Like your uterus is still big. It's already big. It's already stretched out. That's very, very common. I was like, well, I'd really like a dating ultrasound because like, I don't know. Like I couldn't even tell you when my last cycle is. I feel like I was on and off breastfeeding. At that point, Nellie was my longest. I nursed her till like 18 months, which is not that long. But I felt so sick by then. I was like, you can't touch me. So I weaned her, but like I don't remember the last time I had a cycle, right? I was either pregnant or nursing. So by the time I came back in, I was like 9, 10 weeks. I don't know.
And you went back to the midwife.
Back to the midwife, had an ultrasound. So they have an OB on staff, right?
Okay.
And I honestly don't remember where I was. I was at St. Francis, probably the midwife center there. Did not like this OB. It was like a military type guy, like very different. So I had this ultrasound and the lady's like, oh, look, it's twins. And I'm like, I don't even really know what I did. I was like kind of a bit like.
Hold on, how old were your kids at this point?
Manic.
So you had 4 at home that were like.
So the twins are born in March, Nellie's May. So once again, here we are 22, 21 months apart, right? So yeah, I had what? Lennox was 6. I don't know. I had 4 kids under whatever.
And you were homeschooling Lennox at that point.
Lennox and Gabe was doing kindergarten. I don't even know, Melissa. I don't know. It's all a big fat blur. So I get this ultrasound and she's like, yeah, there's 2. And I'm like, you just can't like you just can't mentally try to understand that. Like it's supposed to happen in ones, right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I don't know. I was crying. I was yelling. I don't know. The nurse physically backed away from the table. And you know, but this like little military OB dude, this is just, you know, nothing new, walked out. And I was just like, I don't even know.
Was Matt with you?
No, he was supposed to be there. And I was really mad. And I texted him and he's like, stop joking. I'm like, it's not a joke. Like, it's not a joke. Like, what are you going to do? Like, he just didn't respond. But it took me about 4 or 5 months to actually grasp.
So
that pregnancy.
Was there like fear because they were mono die?
Yeah. So you can have die. They have their own placenta, own sacs, essentially literally like 2 pregnancies at the same time. But they're obviously fraternal twins. So mine were mono die. So they had their own, you know, thin little sac, but they shared a placenta. Okay. So makes it kind of moderately like risk. You know, we're not talking mono, same sac, possible strangulation, like all that. So I'm right in the middle. So now I'm sitting here going like, I have to work with that OB. Like I don't have a choice based on the type of twins I have. And I'm like, I don't like him. Yeah. I'm like, what am I going to do? So I was like, drawn right back to my guy. And I called and left a message. Okay. He called me back. He's like, I hear you're pregnant and you haven't been to see me. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. Like, so sweet, but like I apologized and I'm like, I'm terrified. I'm like, it's not 1, it's 2. This is what I have. But at that point, right off the bat, I'm like, I know exactly the birth I want. Yep. And this is what I want. And I said, but coming back to your practice, I can't birth with anybody else. Yeah. I said, can you commit to my birth? He said, absolutely. And I said, okay. And then he gave me a couple things. He's like, what did he say? He's like, there's 2 things. He said, I can't budge on. He said, I can't budge on the OR. He said, and you have to have 1 down. He said, I don't care about the other. You'll get it out. We'll make it work. He said, but
1 has to be head down.
That first presenting baby has to be head down. And I'm like,
for you to attempt a vaginal delivery.
Yes. I think if I had fraternal twins, if they were both breech, he would have been like, let's go. Yeah. But the fact that they're sharing a placenta, he said, we can't deal with. So there's all kinds of things involved in this. So pretty much that was what I couldn't draw the line at
You had to be in the OR just in case
In
there
the
needed to be a
OR.
crash C-section.
And one had to be head down. So those were like...
Which is still incredibly progressive. I mean, the fact that he was even willing to go after a breech one is, I don't know too much about this, but I would think that that's pretty
Oh, the anesthesiologist was pissed. Like, he was not happy in that room. So anyways, off we go on this journey. And thankfully, I had a wonderful, healthy pregnancy with the type of twins. I mean, you can get into all kinds of growth issues and things like that, which are great. But
you carried them until...
My water broke at 36.4.
It's amazing.
Freaked the heck out. I'm like, it's early. And
it's not early for twins. I mean, 36
it's not,
and 4
but I'm used to going
40 and
I kind of freaked out and I'm like, no, like I'm not ready.
Yeah.
But my Gabe's birthday was like 2 days away. All I wanted to do was make it to Sunday. This was Thursday night. All I wanted to do was make it to Sunday. We had a little party for him on Saturday. Nope. Broke Thursday night, which automatically meant I was going to be away for 2 days. Miss his little birthday party, all of that. So it's like really, really sad. But anyways,
until you went in.
My water broke 11:30. I called him that night. I said, hey, my water broke. He's like, okay. I said, but I wanted labor at home.
You had been to an appointment.
So I'd been to an appointment that day.
Okay.
And we had one head down.
Okay.
But I knew when I got to the hospital, they're going to need to do another ultrasound to check to make sure we haven't flipped anything or anything like that. So one was head down. So we were okay. I'm like, I'd like to labor at home for a little bit. He said, that's fine. He said, he's like, you're well aware. He's like, you felt the contractions last time. He said, we can't mess around with these. So just
because it's twins.
Because it's twins and because the type of twins I had. So anyways, but I think it got to around like 4:35. I made like 3 massive trays of bacon. I made cookies.
I love it.
But the contractions were totally different.
Can we just like talk about the fact? Can we like just talk about the growth between Lennox and you show up at the hospital and you're like, I don't know what's happening. Yes, induce me. He's a little big, whatever. To the fact that you are water broken at home with monodyed twins making bacon. Like holy confidence and like holy growth between like the fear of childbirth and allowing somebody to control the process and literally trusting your body and knowing that you knew what was happening. Yeah. Like that like, makes me all teary-eyed. Like,
and
it's
not
amazing.
only that, but like the growth between like I'm like, I'm going to breastfeed this baby with Lennox. He ended up in the NICU. And I'm like, first time mom trying to nurse in a upright wooden rocking chair with screaming preemies around me. I just was terrified and quit and I exclusively pumped. Gabe, I was terrified, but I want to breastfeed. Everything went really well. I was kind of your terrified first breastfeeding mom, wondering about supply and all that stuff. But so as these kids go on, they like progressed, right? And I kind of like breastfed all of them on demand. Well, here I am with 4 kids under 6 and I'm going to bring twins home. And I'm like, nope. Like it was just kind of crazy confidence. And I'm like, I'm going to breastfeed these kids, but I'm going to also pump. They're going to take bottles from the first day. They're going to have pacifiers and I'm going to breastfeed them for a year. Like that's what we're going to do. And it was literally just like, it almost felt a bit robotic, but I'm like, this is what I'm doing. Like, this is what's going to happen. Like, I remember seeing Laurel in the hospital breastfeeding and she had someone else that was kind of shadowing her or whatever. And I'm like, this is what I'm doing. Like, help me find a game plan.
It's amazing.
And it was just like, it was really, really cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So you made your bacon.
So
you made your bacon.
So I made my bacon, went on in, had an ultrasound. Kids had flipped. So they could tell, like, based on like cranial things and all of that. So Amelia had shoved her sister out of the way, but she had stuck her head down. So I still had one head down, and Estelle was breech kind of like
across,
side lying across. But she had something down here. So I'm going to tell you, like, these contractions felt so different. They didn't feel as strong, and I think it's because, you know, well, number one, my uterus was like on the end of its rope. Yeah. So, right. But it was just very different, very, very different. I didn't feel like I was making as much progress. But anyways, it was fine. It was the same. I labored and I had them. Hold on.
So you labored until you were ready to push a baby out?
Yeah. No, so I had them. I could tell.
When did they bring you to the OR?
So I was lying on the bed. I finally got out of the bed because I started to feel just a little bit off. And I'm like, it's got to be getting close. So I got up on the bed and then I realized I'm like, oh, yep. Because I could feel that whole baby kind of slide down. I'm like, you better go get him because if I have to be in there, like, I'm almost to the point of holding them in, like holding the first one in. So Matt threw on scrubs. Mm-hmm. And I don't know the time. I'm sure it was longer, probably 5 to 10 minutes, but it felt very, very fast. So they quickly wheeled me over. I had to switch tables to what legit felt like a wooden bench outside. It was, it's very narrow because it literally just fits your body. I look back and I'm like, oh, I could have just stayed on that hospital bed. But I would have regretted everything if something had happened, right? Yep. So we're in there and like,
the anesthesiologist want to start and want to give you an epidural?
I had a lock.
Okay.
So I had a lock just in case they literally had to knock me out. Yeah. But that was all I had. Mm-hmm. So he wasn't very happy, which was fine. But so that's what I wanted. I didn't want anything. And so I'm on there and I'm like, it's flat as a board. Yeah. But like I can't get on like stirrups? All fours. He's
are there stirrups on it?
Nope. No stirrups. Okay. So I kind of had like one knee flapped, one up. But at one point I'm like, babe, you're going to have to hold me up because I can't push laying down. And with my placenta, they're sharing a placenta with like ruptures. I can't get on all fours. Okay. So I was kind of bent up to this, like curled up to the side. So I pulled the whole like right side of my back, like on the second baby. So anyways, first baby came like flying in. He like came like literally ran in the thing, came here. And then like, there's the kid. But he also told me that the fact that they share placentas, he's like, I'm not going to give you time in between.
So for those that don't kind of understand what happens in childbirth is after you have a baby, your placenta detaches. Your placenta is what feeds your baby oxygen and nutrients. So if that placenta detaches between 1 and 2, that second one is free falling inside you without any sort of oxygen or support.
Exactly. Okay. Or if it ruptures or anything like that. So he's like, here's the deal. We can do everything you want. He said, but I'm going to go and get that second baby. Yeah. And that's your choice. So I knew what was going to happen. I don't know if people have like external versions. People can have internal versions. So his hand was literally up to his elbow, up in my body, trying to see if he could get that head down. Without breaking that water. But of course, he doesn't have a lot of time. Yep. Worried about that placenta. I'm also 5th and 6th pregnancy, so my uterus is very, very stretched. Well, water breaks, he gets 2 legs. So here we go, and this one's coming out breech. And I've always said, like, now I know there's a reason babies come out head first, because I've never had to push that hard in my entire life.
Because you got to get the butt out.
Well, they were feet. So... Okay. I feel like there's a reason you get that pressure and that head first because it's that largest part and like the rest kind of like slides out after the shoulders. Well, now I got to get those shoulders out and then a head. Yep. So just incredibly different. So yeah, like I pulled the whole entire right side of my body.
At all?
Nope.
Good.
Nope. Yeah. But he did. The mood kind of changed to where he was like,
he was in doctor
mode. He was looking at me straight with his eyes. He would tell me what to do and I did it. And then he looked at me and he said, this push, you get the kid out. Yeah. And I'm like, got it. And pushed like a crazy woman and came out. Everything was fine. But it was pretty wild. Like
that's incredible.
Really, really wild.
But you probably, I mean, I'm going to go out on a limb here, probably wouldn't have had the confidence to do that first or second baby.
Oh my gosh, no, not even close. Not even close. But there's like a 7 to 8 year kind of growth between all of those.
It's so fascinating. It's
wild.
It's so cool.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's crazy. And then I had 2, and that just kind of blows your mind.
Yeah.
Because when they're all balled up, you can kind of see how they fit. But then there's my husband like this.
They were big. They were good sized
twins. They were
twins.
6'5" and 6'7". So, I mean, you just look and I'm just like, I can't even.
It's amazing. It's so incredible.
It's really, really wild. So I had them there and I wheeled them back over. And that was probably.
No NICU. Everything was fine.
They took them off, absolutely, to check. But they brought him back like within 30, 45 minutes. And I was able to kind of attempt to get them both latched on. But like, I didn't really like tandem feed till like 3 weeks. But yeah, it's kind of
incredible. That's so cool. It's such a fun way to end though. Like in that, like that's like birth, like high intensity, amazing badassness right there. I mean, it was cool. Not only was it twins, but it was like a footling breech twins. Like that's amazing.
But it was really neat to see like his confidence in you. And I think sometimes you don't have that care provider that literally looks at you and he's like, you know, when we talked about it, he's like,
he took a risk then too.
He said OR and he said one head down. He's like, you can do whatever else. He's like, you'll get him out.
It's amazing.
And I was like, oh, okay, yes, I will. Like, you know, it's like,
yeah,
but
it's incredible
to have somebody that really does like, we can do it and we can do it your way with a few things.
Like, it's amazing.
It was,
God, I wish that for everybody in this world. And that's what's so crazy.
I had a few limits with the type of pregnancy I had and all that, but everything else, I was able to get what I wanted, which is great.
It's amazing.
So, yeah.
So cool. I don't have a great story like that from my last one, but
but let's there's like the car and then there's like
the car.
My first three. So,
no, it's fine. It's good.
Just,
oh, sweet Catherine girl. Yeah. So we got pregnant. Catherine was not as planned as the rest of them. She was like one of those, let's try not to have a baby, but like got pregnant like 9 days before I ovulated. 7 days. It probably wasn't 9. It was probably more like 7. I wasn't the best at charting, but what was really cool about it is kind of the science behind it and the timing. I pretty much hoped it was a girl, and I really wanted Caroline to have a sister. So, you know, there was some magic surrounding it. It was a really, really hard time. It was just an interesting time to be pregnant. Once again, Latched Mama was changing. It was a lot. It wasn't quite as like, I want to have a baby right now as some of the rest of them had been. So it took me a little while to get my head wrapped around it. I don't know. Catherine's pregnancy was interesting. It was another one of those interesting little journeys. But every baby had been born definitely before 39 weeks. Alex was my longest at like 38 and 5 or something. But Catherine just didn't want to come into the world. Like she just was just chilling. She was happy. We got to 39 weeks. We got to 40 weeks. We got to 40 and 5. And finally, like my blood pressure normally goes up at the end a little bit. And I was getting a little scared because I feel like if your normal is like between 37 and 38, like, and you're older and like you've had a lot of babies, like what is that placenta looking like at 41 and 5 or 40 and 5? I don't even know how far we went, but we went a long ways. And I felt like I had been in labor for weeks. I was exhausted. And like Eric was ready for me to have the baby. The kids were ready for me to have the baby. Like the nannies were ready for me to have the baby. Like, I mean, it was like life had stopped. The house had been spotless. Everybody was ready. And like, everybody was absolutely miserable. I was drinking like red raspberry leaf tea by like the gallon. I was contracting all day, all night, not getting really anywhere. It felt like, I think my midwife checked me at an appointment and like, the way that kind of, I guess, the way that I understand it is like I was having contractions, but everything was so stretched out at this point because we were on baby number 5 that the contractions weren't necessarily pushing the baby down as much as like they were just kind of pushing my like, you know, really big elastic muscles at this point out. So I wore pregnancy belt, I think for like only like a day, but like when she pushed the baby down while she checked me, I was like a good like 4, 5, 6, like just walking around in life because I was still contracting. And the problem is that I have babies so fast and my second stage is so fast and I don't have to push babies out that like I really didn't want to have another baby alone. So we kind of played with it a little bit. I called her on a Monday morning and I was like, I'm done. Like we need to have this baby. And my blood pressure had gone up a little bit more. And she was like, yeah, it's probably time to have this baby. So we did a little bit of a labor inducing cocktail, which did what I feel like absolutely nothing. It didn't affect me the way I think it affects most people. I didn't poop or do anything like that, but it would have been nice if I had, because it would have been hopefully helpful to make sure that I didn't have little rabbit pellets like Benjamin. But it was really nice. It was a sunny Monday, and she came over. She came over like an hour after I took the cocktail, and we had built this really pretty sunroom off of the back of the house for Catherine. I say it was for Catherine. I mean, it was for the house, but Catherine didn't really have a room. I had used like every other room in the house to have babies in at this point. I didn't want to overlap, and I wanted her to have her special place. So it was beautiful, and it was this nice little sunroom, and I went on a walk with Eric, then I broke my water, and I got in the tub, and I was like, I didn't even have a full contraction in the tub, and I was like, I have to poop. And I just kind of looked at her and I was like, oh, fudge. Like, I'm not pooping. Like, I'm about to have a baby. Like, it was very, very, very fast once my water broke. It was like one contraction. She came out. I was smiling. Eric was smiling. There was like very little labor involved in any of it because I was so close anyways. And I had spent like the weeks prior bouncing on a ball, I feel like, and doing half the work. But she was born. And my thing was when I went over to the midwife's house on Monday afternoon and said, you know, hey, we got to get this thing moving. Like, it's time. And I didn't feel well and it was time to go. I was like, how cool would it be if we could like literally send the kids away, have this baby and have them home by bedtime? And that's exactly what happened, which was really, really cool. So like, I think the whole process started around like 3 p.m. and then I had the baby at like 7:30 and then I FaceTimed with my mom who had the kids and said, hey, you know, the baby's here. And so they came home. Everybody got tucked into bed. Baby got tucked into my bed. And, you know, the rest was history. So it was beautiful. It was a super, super happy birth. There was very little, there was very little like unknown about it. Like, it was very controlled. It was very, I think, what everybody needed. Like, it was just joyful and it was happy. And it was like what we needed after kind of a hard year for kind of everybody involved. And it was really, really good. But, you know, it's just so magical how like things teach you things and birth teaches you and you grow and you like, and you learn and you sometimes get exactly what you need. And I think Catherine's birth was exactly what everybody needed. So it was good. Yeah. Wow. This has been a really long podcast episode, but how do you do it?
We did pretty good.
I know. I mean, how do you do it with, you know, 11 babies or 11 babies? So 10 births, 11 babies. Yeah. Is that where we're at? Wow. You can't have any more. Maybe we'll add one more on my side at some point. We'll see. To be continued. ... Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this. Yep. Sorry it's long. I'm sure you guys had to listen to it in batches, but I don't know. Biggest takeaway is you might not get exactly what you want, but, you know, search for those little things and there's always something to learn and some place to grow. Yep. Cool. All right. Bye, guys. Thank you.